And we are live. It's the Revved Up 906 podcast, a Detroit Pistons podcast to be exact. And I'm Hudson.
And I'm Ryan.
And before we get into episode number 30 of season 3, y'all know the deal. I got to talk to you about a few quick things. First off, if you are new to the channel, make sure to like and subscribe. And if you happen to like our podcast, hit the arrow button below. That's a share button where you can share us on Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, all the above. So make sure to share us to your fellow Detroit Pistons fans, especially if they're diehards. We love when the diehard Pistons fans are watching. Also, if you, like I said, happen to like our podcast, make sure to follow us on Instagram. The link to our Instagram is in the description below this video. We try to post clips, debate topics, hot takes on there. So if you want to be in the know with everything going on with the Detroit Pistons, make sure to follow us on Instagram. All right, Ryan, without further ado, let's get into today's episode number 30 of season 3. And I like these kind of episodes when we just kind of cover everything current going on with the Detroit Pistons. It doesn't, leave us just to statistics, just to player personnel things, but we can kind of talk about everything going on with the Pistons, which is really exciting. And as we know, the Pistons sitting at the top of the Eastern Conference, there is a lot of exciting things to talk about. And we're going to start off with talking about Jalen Duren and his all-star probability. We're going to get into talks about a Jaren Jackson possible trade to the Pistons. We'll talk about that. And then also the NBA Finals odds. For Pistons sitting at the top of the East, I have a feeling that they got snubbed pretty bad. So we have a great episode for you listeners today. So make sure to like and subscribe. Okay, topic number 1, Ryan. Jalen Duren's all-star probability. And the reason I bring this up is just because this week, Asar Thompson had a great comment during a press conference, and this was what he was asked about. He was asked, what do you make of Jalen Duren's growth this season? Asar says, Jalen Duren is an all-star. Jalen is playing aggressively, and honestly, there's not a big man that really wants to mess with him right now, and there's no one that's close to him except our 2 backups on our team. That's it. End quote. Obviously, he's being a little tongue-in-cheek, saying the 2 backups on the Pistons are the top 3 centers. But Ryan, I think the talks are amping up about Jalen Duren being a top big in today's NBA. And at one time, it was like, okay, is this young man going to grow into a superstar, or is he going to always just be that physical big that gathers up rebounds like a Drummond? But it seems to us, and it seems to others Pistons fans and nationally, that he is going to be an all-star. When talking about this topic of Jalen Duren being an all-star, do you think there's a case where he isn't? Like, is it possible that he does get snubbed?
So to me personally, I would have to say I think it's 50-50. And the reason why I say 50-50 is because if you think of him in the conversation or comparison rather of Cade Cunningham as an example to like the public per se, like the perception of it, it would be like Jalen Duren is not thought of as like the second option on the Pistons right now. There's not really a go-to player that's not even thought of as the second option right now for the Pistons. Everyone is in the mindset of it's Cade carrying the team as far as like everyone's perception of the team. And Pistons fans and everybody in our division and even in the East know that it's Jalen Duren as the number 2. But there's not a lot of people in the media per se that would go like, oh, there's Jalen Duren. He's number 2 behind Cade Cunningham. I don't know a lot of bandwagon, let alone basic knowledge fans going there and sitting there going, you know what? It is Jalen Duren as the number 2. Not a lot of people know ball, and not a lot of people know that Jalen Duren is as good as what he is. They just know he's on the team. As far as his stats, like when you're going 17 to 18 points a game, and then you're shooting above 60% from the field consistently on a regular basis. And then you add in the fact that he's averaging 11 to 12 rebounds a night. Yeah, I would say he's an all-star, and he's still only 22 years old, which is the crazy thing.
I know.
But he's doing outside of Cade Cunningham, Cade is putting on a masterpiece of performance so far this season. What he's doing in a very small sample size, because there's games that he's missed this year so far that he shouldn't have missed, but he's missed. That if you add those games into the mix, I think you could have made an even larger case for him being an all-star, because if it, like, you had Cade miss those same games, if Cade doesn't miss the same games that Duren misses, then it's
Mhm.
kind of like along the lines of like, okay, JD is the number two as far as public perception goes. But I think there's always going to be those stupid fans out there that think Austin Reeves, as an example, should be an all-star. And there's always going to be the
Yeah.
fans that think Jalen Brunson is should be in the GOAT conversation or is one of the best players in the NBA currently. I think that is true, that he is one of the better players, but better is a strong word because he really isn't that good either. I'm just throwing that out there, and you know that, and everyone that knows me knows that I'm not a big Brunson fan. I was a fan of him in Dallas, but since I have not been a fan. But with that being said, like, you're always going to have the boneheads that vote for people that they know and that they think are good. And so I think the situation that Duren is in is that if he does make the All Star game, it is going to be more so that he was a reserve that ended up getting in because of an injury, or somebody didn't end up participating somehow, some way. That's how I think he gets in if he does make it, because I don't think there's a way where, or a world rather, where he makes it over Karl Anthony Towns, as an example. And that's not because he is a lesser player. That's because the perception around the league is that Cat is better than Jalen Duren.
The way I kind of approach this topic is I think back to the 2014, 2015 Atlanta Hawks when they were sitting at the top of the Eastern Conference and they had literally five players in the All-Star game that were never necessarily superstars, but played at a very high level. You think of Kyle Korver, Paul Millsap, Al Horford, Jeff Teague, and there was one other one in there. I thought maybe it was four of them. And the reason I bring that up is because the Pistons are playing at such a high level right now, sitting atop of the Eastern Conference, that I could see the NBA bringing in Jalen Duren as that second bid on that roster. So that shows that because the team is playing so well, he deserves that nod. And then also he is playing at a high level, even when he is playing against a Karl Anthony Towns, Nikola Jokic, for example. That I think he deserves that nod. Now, when talking about probability, a percentage of chance of it happening, I lean to a 75% chance of it happening. Obviously, the starting lineups have been voted on, and so that's kind of settled. He won't be a starter, but those reserve spots are there, and I think that this year might be the nod. And it's also nice to see a guy like Asar Thompson that doesn't necessarily give major quotes about teammates to him give that credit and acknowledgement to Jalen Duren just really makes me proud of that, like you said, 22-year-old Detroit Pistons player in Jalen Duren. So obviously, in the next couple weeks, we'll see this talk most likely ramp up, and if he's able to stay on the court and keep playing, stay healthy. I think we might see an All-Star appearance from Jalen Duren.
I
The
will
one
say,
thing I really, yeah, go ahead,
will
yeah,
say, I have the fan returns pulled up right now. And out of
yeah,
the whole entire Eastern Conference, and this is including every single position, he is not on the top 20 list. He does not appear. Um,
wow,
the bigs that do appear on the list, if we want to count Giannis as a big, which I don't really count him as a big, so I'm
mm-hmm.
not going to count him per se. But you have Karl Anthony Towns sitting at 7. He is the highest big on the list. And then, like, I guess you could say Jalen Johnson is a stretch 4, but he's really a wing. So
Mm-hmm.
he's on there. Um, Pascal Siakam at 10. Scotty Barnes, again, he's a wing, but some people categorize him as a stretch 4. He's at
Oh, I don't like
14.
Scotty.
Joel Embiid. See, this is the boneheaded people that have the stupid stuff like Joel Embiid being on here. Joel Embiid has played that many games, and he's somehow
Mm-hmm.
on the list with over 200,000 votes. But yet Jalen Duren is not on the list. So that's the point that I'm trying to make, is you have the boneheads that always have these players on there. Like, I love Josh Hart from the work standpoint, but he should not be on this list. Like, oh,
Well,
but yeah. So
what? Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say that it's just the standpoint of, um, you have the situation of the fact that he's not on the top 20 list, and yet you have those kind of players ahead of him when you all know that he actually should be ahead of those players as far as voting goes. But it is a popularity
Totally.
contest nowadays, and so therefore, it's a tough position whether or not he's going to make it. And yeah, it's just tough.
Well, and if you're watching ball, the Pistons play the Indiana Pacers 4 times a year, and I like Pascal Siakam, but Duren schools Pascal every time. It's not a competition, and I haven't really seen Duren go up against Embiid yet. I believe Duren was out when they played the 76ers, and I don't really pay attention to the 76ers, so I don't know what Embiid's current situation is. But I would like his odds even against an Embiid. That might be a hot take. I don't know, but that's just how I feel. Let's talk about Jaren Jackson Jr. possibly getting traded away from the Memphis Grizzlies. And it feels like the Memphis Grizzlies is a rice cooker right now. If anyone works with rice cookers, they just like can explode at any time. And I feel like that's where the organization is at. The clock is ticking and they might just explode at any point. And it seems that many players might be dealt away. John Morant is one of them, and Jaren Jackson Jr. also being thrown out there. And it talks are ramping up that the Detroit Pistons and the Boston Celtics are top suitors to receive Jaren Jackson Jr. So when approaching this topic, I want to talk about, okay, is this something that's actually realistic? And if it is realistic, who are the Pistons going to have to give up? Because we all know that, and most of us watched the New York Knicks series last year when the Pistons brought them to 6 games. It was obvious that Tobias Harris wasn't going to cut it in a 7 game series. He is a great four. I love Tobias Harris. He played actually very well in that series, but as far as playing against and banging bodies in the paint, in protecting the rim, it just wasn't going to cut it. And so I do like the thought of the Pistons bringing in a Jaren Jackson Jr., but then you look at the young core that this Pistons team has and says, okay, it makes sense that the Memphis Grizzlies might want to restart with some of our young guys, but that means we have to give up these guys we've invested in, used picks on, and have built the chemistry that is working so well for the Detroit Pistons currently. The other caveat to this topic is that Trajan Langdon has talked at the podium about how he does not have urgency to make a big trade before the trade deadline. But then that being said, Jaren Jackson Jr. is a very attractive player for this Pistons team. Ryan, what are some of your first thoughts when talking about this possible trade?
So to me, prior to this season, I would have sat there and said to myself, I 1000% want Jaren Jackson Jr. on this team because
Yeah.
I am very high on him. But now, sitting where we are at in the Eastern Conference, being number one, and have
Hmm.
been number one for what, 2 months now, 3 months now,
Oh yeah.
I'm sitting there going like, I don't know if I necessarily want him on the team because I'm afraid of breaking up this connectivity that our current team has, and they just
Yeah.
play for one another consistently on a regular basis. So from the standpoint of the talent, oh yes, I would love the talent on the team. But from the standpoint of um, just breaking up what we currently have, I would be skeptical of doing that. Um, I think Tobias has been playing good, and I love Tobias, and I will always love Tobias.
Oh yeah. Big time.
But I think the writing is starting to appear on the walls for him because for him, the most out of anyone on this current roster, and outside of like Marcus Sasser, I would throw out there too. But the reason for that is just because I don't know outside of this season if he will ever have as much value as he currently has right now.
Oh,
And
definitely. Right.
I don't know if they're going to necessarily want to just have the rest of the contract go out or not. Because if you keep him for the remainder of his contract, and then he ends up you kind of parting ways with him, you get nothing in return. Whereas if you move him now, you do get maybe a second round pick that could turn into something else later down the line. Because we know Trajan Langdon is a very smart guy, and he is very frugal with his draft picks. And usually, you can turn a second round pick into something good. So I'm torn because I think he'd be the one to go if he were to go. But I also think the Grizzlies are gonna look for younger pieces. So that's why
Mhm.
Jaden Ivey would get thrown out there too, because there's no way they're gonna do Jaren Jackson Jr. for Tobias Harris, because that's just a very lopsided trade. So they're gonna want something in return. So I'm torn because I feel as if that trade were to happen, we would have to give up an arm and a leg to get him. And
Mhm.
I don't know if I want to do that, especially where we're at right now. because where the roster's at right now, if you keep our draft picks and you don't have to give up anything, and you keep building through the draft like we have done successfully the last couple of years, and then even this past offseason, we bring in Duncan Robinson, Karis LeVert, etc.,
Mhm.
and we're able to build through free agency. So clearly something is working. So then my mindset is, why trade all of that away and give up so much to get a high commodity in Jaren Jackson Jr. when what you have is clearly working since we've been atop the Eastern Conference standings for the last 2 months or so. So I am torn because I love the player, I love the concept and the idea of bringing him in, but at the same time, I'm sitting here going like, why break something that like the saying goes, if it's not broke, don't fix it. So like our situation right now, we're in the perfect
Right.
situation. Why break it when it doesn't need to be broken? So I'm torn. I'm 50-50 because I love Jaren Jackson Jr., even though I'm 100% go blue always. But at the same time, I don't know because I don't want to break up this team.
My worry is if the Detroit Pistons trade for Jaren Jackson Jr., that would have to mean that Isaiah Stewart is most likely involved in that trade. Ron Holland, I think, would be thrown in there. He's been playing very well as of late. And then, of course, you mentioned Jaden Ivey. I think that that's another name that could possibly be thrown in there. And I think as far as going and trying to get Isaiah Stewart, if you're the Memphis Grizzlies, I think it's brilliant. He's kind of like a Zach Rudolph in today's NBA. Zebo, whoever used to like Zebo, was one of those guys. He also kind of matches that bad guy feel that Memphis tends to like and develop in their franchise. Um, so I think it would be smart. I think it would be good for Jaren Jackson Jr. to get out of Memphis. It kind of feels like he's been like the one shining beam of light throughout all the chaos, and he's just such a not chaotic guy. So I could see him very much wanting to get out of that environment. So I guess time will tell. We'll keep looking and seeing if anybody, if Shams gives us any updates or anything like that. Um, but overall, I don't see it being very probable. I think Trajan Langdon is going to be playing as far as bringing guys in very conservative. I don't think he needs to make any big moves just because, like you said, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. The next thing we're going to talk about is the likelihood of NBA Finals winners. And if you're a better, you bet on DraftKings, you bet on ESPN, bet all the things. Pay attention to this. And Ryan, this is actually something that kind of irked me a little bit when looking in the Detroit Pistons news. The Pistons are set as sixth most likely team to win the NBA Finals. So that means there are five teams in the NBA that are set as more likely to win the NBA Finals. The teams ahead of the Detroit Pistons are the Oklahoma City Thunder, Denver Nuggets, the San Antonio Spurs, and it's now a shocker. We've always gotten these guys put ahead of us, the New York Knicks. The Pistons, then right behind us, the Celtics, and then the Cleveland Cavaliers after that. What's funny and makes this so interesting, DraftKings, you upset me, is that the Pistons are second in the power rankings, also with the second best record in the NBA. And just as a fun fact, the Pistons are 4 games ahead of the New York Knicks in the Eastern Conference standings. Ryan, does this irk you as much as it irks me, or am I just being, a diehard Pistons fan and set me straight?
No, it bugs me too. Because if we want to bring up the most recent game, head to head matchup between the Knicks and us, the end result ended up being
Oh
us
yeah,
winning by 20 plus with ease. It was not close whatsoever at any stretch of that game. And so to me, when you have them saying that the Knicks are ahead of us. Now, I guess
I
you
know.
can look at it one of two ways, being that, yes, the Pistons have been so good and not really bad at any point in time that they're going to fall off this cliff at some point and they're going to start losing some games here and there, which is already starting to happen somewhat. But then you have the Knicks who have been towards the top, but have been like winning, losing here and there, but not consistently winning like the Pistons have. So I guess from that standpoint, you can look at the longevity of things, being that the Knicks long term, because of where they're at with the winning and the losing, they have a stronger chance of having a late push towards the end of the
Hmm.
season and into the playoffs. Whereas the Pistons, they're probably thinking are going to burn out at some point, and are not going to be right in that mix, but still be a playoff caliber team. So I guess maybe that's how they're looking at things. But to me, I'd be irked with that just in the sense that I hate the Knicks because they are by far one of the most overrated franchises in NBA history. They have
For
one
sure.
champion. No, they have wait. No, yeah, they have not. Wait. I can't even think off the top of my head. It's a Friday. It's been a long day. But no, the Knicks suck. Um, for me to sit here and say that they have a stronger chance of winning the championship when we blew them out by 20 plus this year, and yet they have the somewhat more established, better, well-rounded team than we do. I don't know. I would be one to assume that we have a better shot at the finals or even a finals appearance than they do. Now, I will say the path to the finals does differ because if we end up with an easier matchup or if we end up with a harder matchup, let's say we do get the number one seed, and yes, the play-in tournament, those teams the last couple of years in the Eastern Conference have been the same teams. It's been Atlanta, Miami, and then whoever else. It really depends on the way the season
Yeah.
shakes out. So we can at least expect we're either playing the Heat or the Hawks. And I will say the Heat would be the easier of the two. The Hawks are actually pretty darn good right now. Yes, they made the Trae Young trade, which is
Playing
actually
well. Yeah.
apart because I'm not a Trae Young fan. But the way Jalen Johnson has been putting on a masterclass this year is something fun to watch. But then also you have um, uh, Daniels, who is a stud too. And then you throw in the fact that you have Onyeka Okongwu, who is not obviously an all-star caliber big. He could be one day, but he's not there yet. But he's still a good overall big. And then you add in Zachary Reese-Shea. Like they actually have a solid group of guys where no, I'm not going to take them over the Pistons, but they could at least make it a little bit more challenging per se if they get hot.
Mhm.
So as far as matchups go, I can understand maybe in another dimension that the Pistons have a harder shot of getting to the second round than the Knicks do. But I would still be irked by that. The Spurs, to me, I
Mm.
get it because the Western Conference is actually pretty wide open right now. Outside of the Thunder and then even the Nuggets, it really is the Spurs at three because the Lakers, they can't shoot. They haven't been able to shoot for the longest time. And then they can't seem to win games either with the mix that they have because LeBron is taking them down with him. But then the Clippers, they can't seem to stay healthy ever. Um, and then there's not really much to go off of that. I mean, you have the Timberwolves, and yes, Anthony Edwards is always going to put on a clinic, and Rudy Gobert is the defensive player of the year almost every single season. But that the Western Conference, I feel like outside of the Thunder, it's really the Spurs to lose. So I can understand those two teams ahead of the Pistons as far as shots go of winning. But the one that irks me, which irks you, is the Knicks.
And one thing to keep in mind too is the way odds are set in DraftKings ESPN bet is what teams are getting the most bets and slips bet on the predicting, who's going to win the NBA finals. So, that just means a lot of people have put money on the Thunder. A lot of people have put money on the Nuggets. So, people just haven't been betting as much for the Detroit Pistons. So therefore you got to get on DraftKings and start betting the Pistons. So they start moving up that list a little bit. Um, Also, comment below what your thoughts are on some of these topics. We'd love to know what you guys have to say about the Pistons being the sixth most likely team to win the NBA Finals. All right, Ryan, it comes to our weekly topic where we'll be doing this each and every week, picking out our player shout outs for the week. My shout out this week is Ron Holland, and it's specifically because of his play against the Phoenix Suns most recently, that close win that was decided in the last minutes. Ron Holland had 11 points, 9 rebounds off the bench in 21 minutes of game. He is just so active. He reminds me of a young Dennis Rodman. He's all over the place, getting in the passing lanes. He's also done a very good job of playing well without the basketball, finding ways to get to the rim, cutting off the screens, getting out in the fast break, getting those easy points because he's not the most three-point shooter guy, obviously. So doing a great job of rim rushing and then just fighting for those rebounds. I love to see the young man getting 9 rebounds. Ryan, who's your shout out this week?
I'm gonna have to go with Unk. Tobias last night put on a clinic defensively,
Yep.
5 steals, which is absurd. But that also shows you how bad the Suns are without Devin Booker. But then I also a little partial shout out to Jaden Ivey and the way
Yeah.
he's played since coming off the injury. He's actually playing a lot better than I think a lot of people expected him to, because we had no idea what he was going to be for us, at least since that injury. But
Mhm.
he is slowly starting to get into the Jaden Ivey we knew and loved before the injury. That crossover last night
Yeah,
on
yeah, yeah.
Dunn was phenomenal. Dunn was not even close. I mean, he was done for after that shot went in. But no, I would have to give a partial shout out to honestly to both, because the way Unk showed up after coming off of a couple of games missed, putting on a clinic,
Mhm.
16 points, 7 rebounds, 5 steals, and then just the way Jaden Ivey has played coming off the injury, to me, is like, thank you, Ivy. We've missed you, and it is refreshing to see not a bum coming off the bench. We are actually seeing Jaden Ivey once again.
Yeah, they're both very, I like to call them graceful players. You know, Jaden Ivey's done a great job coming off of his injury. And then Tobias Harris staying relevant in today's NBA as a veteran is very, very cool. That will do it for today's episode number 30 of season 3. Make sure to like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next episode. Peace.